Hey, what's up, people? Piz out here, and today I've got kind of a video response for you guys. This is in response to a video that my buddy Lenaria Claire did recently. I know a bunch of other YouTubers have tackled this topic as well. It's an awesome topic. It's a topic that it seemed like a topic that I really should have covered years ago, and that is movies that have impacted me the most. And I compiled a list, and a lot of these movies you guys have heard me talk about either on this channel or over on the Sausage Factory, some of them at length. But I really wanted to talk about why they impacted me more in detail. So I kind of compiled a list starting with what I thought were the earliest films and moved to some more recent films. And then one movie that I wanted to talk about, sort of stand out from the pack a little bit. But the first movie for me as a kid that I remember just absolutely loving and watching repeatedly, I'm sure, like my mother was, she probably was tired of hearing me talk about it, tired of seeing me sitting in front of the TV and watching it, and that was Jaws. And I've talked about Jaws a lot, but that movie had a huge impact on me. I loved horror movies, and it had those horror elements in it, and it was kind of a safe horror movie. It was a movie that my mother would say, okay, you can watch this. Whereas, like, Friday the 13th and stuff like that, it was just, no, not going to happen. Jaws, yeah. I was always, and I've always been fascinated with sharks. I think sharks are just really fascinating, really simple, creatures. You throw those two elements together in this awesome, just sort of adventure film that is so well done. I absolutely loved the movie. It used to come on TV all the time when I was a kid, and I watched it every single time I found it on TV. No matter what point in the movie it was, I stopped, I sat, I watched it. I recorded it one time on a blank tape off of the television. And watched that tape, that VHS tape, to the point of just absolutely wearing it out with the commercials included. Jaws is one of those movies that I can recite the dialogue to verbatim. I've seen it so many times. I absolutely love it. So much has been said about the film, and I'm sure it's had a huge impact on many lives. But for me, it's just one of those movies that, and even today, it came out in 75, so we're talking, 39 years ago, and it's still just as good. It's aged, I think, very well. It's still just a great, awesome movie. I've also read the book by Peter Benchley. It's interesting to read the book, comparing it to the movie, because there's more going on in the book. But the movie really focuses on, just the adventure type qualities. And the movie's really sort of its own standalone thing, really. But just love Jaws. That movie had such a huge impact on me as a kid, making me really start, loving movies, I think. I really saw the magic in that film. And that really, I think, led me down the road of loving movies. And, loving that magic that a good movie can produce. The next movie for me that impacted me hugely as a kid was The Lost Boys. Again, a horror movie, but not, a little less safe of a horror movie, I guess, than Jaws. But The Lost Boys, my God. Love this movie. It's another one. I don't care how 80s it feels, how 80s it looks, it feels. I watch it today. I still love it. I still think it's really cool. Everything about it was just so cool for me as a kid. The fact that, yeah, they're vampires in the movie. They all look cool. Everybody in the cast looks cool. They've got they're decked out in this, 80s gear. The wardrobe looks awesome. The vampires looked different. I thought they had a different sort of look than some of the other vampire movies that I'd seen at the time. The soundtrack, of course, awesome. The look of the film, the style of the film, the cinematography of the film, I thought looked amazing. It was a movie that I used to rent constantly. There was a little grocery store across the street from where I lived that rented tapes. and one of them that they had was The Lost Boys. And I would rent it, I'm not kidding, on a weekly basis and just watch the crap out of it. I remember one time I was sick, and my grandmother walked over to the store and rented the tape for me and brought it back as if the tape could cure me, as if the Lost Boys had medicinal properties that could just cure me of whatever was ailing me at the time. But another movie I've seen countless times, another movie that I can just recite the dialogue to verbatim. Another movie that I have absolutely no problem reaching for and watching today. It's still just as good for me today as it was back then. I still just absolutely love everything about The Lost Boys. Like I said, great cast, great look in the movie, great soundtrack, just amazing film. I love it to death. One of my all-time favorite movies. Right up there with Jaws as far as movies that I've seen the most. And we're talking many times I've watched The Lost Boys and Jaws. Those are the two movies that I've seen the most in my life. The next movie that really had a big impact on me, and this was sort of in the early 90s when I felt like I was sort of becoming more self-aware, aware of, just the world around me, and becoming more aware of film, movies, and what really makes a good movie. And that was the film True Romance, which is directed by Tony Scott. It was the first produced script written by Quentin Tarantino. I loved the film, and it really sort of, that was the movie that really sort of impacted me toward, okay, this is what kind of makes a good movie. We've got great writing in the film, great characters in the film, the movie looks great, and it's just this, it's this weird, harrowing, almost fairy tale-like, super violent love story, and I just loved everything about it. It was really the movie that woke me up to, okay, movies can be more than just simple entertainment. I would watch, back in the day, I would go to the video store, I would just grab a bunch of movies, if they looked like good movies, or if they, if they were horror movies, I'd grab them, I'd bring them home, and I'd watch them. And whether they were good or bad didn't really dawn on me, to be perfectly honest. I think I would find little things in every movie that I liked, and there were movies that, I would rent again or want to watch again more so than others. But none of them really seemed to dawn on me, this is a good movie or this is a bad movie. True Romance hit me that this is a really good movie because, like I said, it's written well, the characters are great, the acting is great, the movie looks great, the pacing is great. It was totally unlike anything I'd ever seen at the time. And it's another one I've seen countless times. It's another one that I can watch just about any time. It's one that I reach for on a fairly regular basis, at least a couple of times a year, and want to watch. True Romance, just one of my all-time favorite movies. Great film. Another film that I saw a couple of years later, that the same thing, that sort of established the fact that there are some films that are just on a higher level than other films. That was the movie Heat. Written and directed by Michael Mann. And I don't think I'd ever seen a film at that point with that level of dedication to its characters and that level of sort of, detailed characters, and just sort of detailed, how they were, how these, career criminals, how diligent they had to be in their, life of crime. And the same thing on the other side of the coin with Al Pacino's character and, being a cop, and just the kind of movie that at the end just left me chills. Awesome movie, an epic feeling movie. It was like a 3-hour movie. And again, awesome writing. The movie looks fantastic. Great acting. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro together. Val Kilmer does a great job in the film. There's a great supporting cast, including Tom Sizemore. Just an amazing film. Like I said, the attention to detail in that film really showed me, there are different levels. There are some movies that are just on a much higher level than other movies. And Heat was that movie that really said to me, this is, what a great filmmaker can do, and really sort of got me interested. Okay, this guy, Michael Mann, let me see what else he's done. It really sort of put, the director's name, the filmmaker's name in my mind as somebody to keep an eye on, aside from just the actors. I liked actors and different actors, and if they were in a film, I would want to watch it because, just they're in it, by virtue of the fact that that actor's in it. I think Heat really sort of showed me, okay, movies are, the director's medium, and you sort of need to keep an eye on who is the director of the film, who is the writer of the film, because that can play, that can play a big part of whether the movie's good or bad. And that led me down the road of discovering a lot of Michael Mann's other stuff, like Thief, which I think is great, The Last of the Mohicans, which I think is great, Manhunter, which I think is great, and then followed him on into other films. And I've really liked pretty much all of Michael Mann's films. Next up is a film that I saw probably toward, let's see, I think it came out in the late 90s, if I recall. And I was just getting out of high school around that time, and a buddy of mine was telling me about it. There was just this huge sort of upswell of World War II movies, and a lot of tribute being paid to World War II veterans. And I remember seeing trailers for The Thin Red Line and thinking that, it's got a great cast, it looks pretty good. But then there was also Saving Private Ryan, which is Steven Spielberg. You got Tom Hanks in there, and that just seemed to overshadow it. And everybody was talking about Saving Private Ryan, and it was big at the box office, and, Saving Private Ryan this and that, and it was everywhere. And Thin Red Line just kind of came and went. And I was actually fishing with a friend of mine, and we got off on the topic of war movies, and he said, you need to watch Thin Red Line. You should definitely watch Thin Red Line. So I went and I rented Thin Red Line, and I watched it, and again, it was one of those revelation type moments. I'd never seen a film like The Thin Red Line, a film as, it's cinematic poetry. It's an incredibly beautiful film to watch. The cinematography, the look of the film, the sequences within, the forests, and just beautiful to look at. The voiceovers, the poetic voiceovers throughout the entire film, the struggle between, the characters in the film, between, the duality of, the human spirit, and I was just being hit by all these just really emotional elements over and over again. Like an amazing cast in the film, amazing cast. Nick Nolte, Sean Penn, Woody Harrelson, John Travolta's in there shortly. Jim Caviezel is phenomenal in The Thin Red Line. Elias Koteas is phenomenal in The Thin Red Line. Just an amazing cast. George Clooney is in it briefly. Great cast. Amazing movie. Really, just an emotionally powerful. Still one of the most, if not the most powerful film experiences that I ever had in my life up to this point. And again, another one where I was like, okay, well, who is this guy, Terrence Malick? And it made me want to go research who Terrence Malick is and read up on him. And that, a lot of people called him the cinematic equivalent of like a J.D. Salinger, a guy who just, he comes out of, he has, he did 2 films like back in the 70s that were huge, and then he just sort of disappeared. He went into seclusion, and The Thin Red Line was his, return. And I absolutely love The Thin Red Line, one of my all-time favorite movies. Again, one of the most powerful movie-going experience of my life. A more recent movie that I just absolutely loved, and it's probably the last film that I saw that it's just one of those movies that I watched, and I've seen it several times, and every time I watch it, I just watch it with a huge smile on my face, and that is the movie Drive. And you guys have heard me talk about Drive and how much I love Drive, and I love Drive. Like I said, I've seen it several times. It's the kind of movie I watch, and like I'm not. I just sort of realize I'm smiling, I'm grinning ear to ear, because I just love the film so much. I love the sort of spare, minimalistic qualities of the film as far as the characters are concerned. I love the fact that Driver, that's his name. You never hear his name in the film. He's just credited as Driver. I love that. I love that there's really no backstory for him. I love a good anti-hero movie, and I think Drive is an excellent example of a great anti-hero movie. I love the soundtrack. Amazing soundtrack. The look of the film, phenomenal. Everything about the film I absolutely love. I love the performances. I think all the performances in the film are fantastic. Nicholas Winding Refn, who directed the film, again, it kind of, I'd seen his film Bronson before this, so I knew he was kind of a more eccentric filmmaker, but definitely made me want to go back and watch his other films, the Pusher films. It really had me looking forward to Only God Forgives, which I liked as well. I love Drive. I love Drive. It's one of those movies, again, I could probably watch that movie honestly like once a week, and just every time I watch it, have a huge grin on my face. Like I said, I love a good anti-hero movie. I think Drive is an excellent example of a great anti-hero movie. I love it. Love it, love it. It's just the kind of movie I think also that you can just sit down and kind of talk about as well. Like what was going on here, what was going on there, and why did he put the mask on, and the whole thing in the elevator before he stomps the dude's head into jelly. Just phenomenal movie. Phenomenal movie. Love Drive so much. The horror movie that impacted me the most, and this is probably not going to be a surprise to anybody out there, was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. At the time I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I had already seen like all the Friday the 13th movies, all the Halloween movies, all the Nightmare movies, the Hellraiser movies. I was pretty well versed in horror at this point. I was in high school, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even after the point, being a kid, when my mother was like, okay, you just watch whatever, it's fine. She was still, no, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, no, you're not going to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I don't think she'd ever seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But she sort of knew of the film's reputation, and of course, if you've got a movie titled Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you just envision an absolute bloodbath, a horrible, just carnage. And I think that's one of the many sort of magic qualities about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because it's really not a bloodbath. And I try to convince people of that today, because just the title alone disturbs them. Just the title alone disturbs them. So if they think if the title alone can disturb me, the film is going to like put me in a psych ward or something. Or they want to argue about, oh, it's bloody, gory, it's a bloodbath. No, it's not. There's very little to no blood in the film at all. The violence is really, it's subconscious. You see it in your mind. You don't see it on the screen. That's one of the many sort of magical qualities about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It hit me on so many levels. It has those slasher elements, but there's so much more going into it. There's so much more about the film. I was knocked out by just sort of the look of the film. And not just, the grainy, scratchy, really washed out, just sort of like sun-bleached. I mean, it looked like a hot movie. They're filming it in Texas in the summer, so it was hot. But the movie itself, just the movie itself, looks super hot. So I mean, it's like it's a movie you can watch and like sweat. It'll cause you to sweat. And I loved the fact that the movie, you know, I think they shot the movie for like less than $100,000 or something like that. I can't remember the budget right off the top of my head, but I thought it looked fantastic. Some of the shots that Tobe Hooper got in that film are phenomenal. Where Terry McMahon is walking, she gets off the swing and she's walking toward the house, and the camera goes under the swing, and the house just sort of rises up in front of her and kind of just consumes her. I love that sequence. The family unit themselves, the black humor around the family unit that a lot of people just didn't. Yeah, they were just so sort of shocked, I think, by the film, and so sort of drawn into the film, and you know, those subconscious elements of it, that they didn't catch, you know, the dark humor in the film, which is something that I love as well. It's the kind of film, it's a building film. It's the kind of movie that just, the suspense just slowly gets turned and twisted and, you know, just screwed into you. Slowly, and at the end, it's an absolute madhouse. It's that slow building, slow grinding, just sort of whittling its way into your mind, building that suspense that at the end of the film, it's complete anarchy, and then the film just ends like that. I love that aspect of the film. I can imagine people, you know, in theaters or at the drive-in with their hands on the wheel, you know, white knuckle, or their hands digging into their knees, watching that, you know, those closing moments of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then it's just over, and it just ends, and they're just, it's hearing chainsaws, you know, in their sleep, you know, not being able to sleep after watching that movie. There's just so much to Texas Chainsaw Massacre that I think it, you know, even though it's one of those movies that is heralded, you know, it's a masterpiece, it's, you know, a genius piece of work, you know, I kind of still don't think it gets the recognition it deserves. I think it deserves all the credit in the world. I think, you know, like I said, I think it's a watershed moment, not just in horror movies, because, I mean, let's face it, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in my opinion, created the contemporary slasher movie. It created that archetype that is copied even to this day. I think without Chainsaw, there wouldn't be Halloween. If there wasn't Halloween, there wouldn't be Friday the 13th. Without Friday the 13th, there wouldn't be, you know, slasher movies as we know them today. So it all goes back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was a watershed moment in horror. I think it's just a great, you know, landmark, just independent film as well. A copy of it is in the Museum of Modern Art. It's for me, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've said this before. I think it's the Citizen Kane of horror movies. I think it's the most influential horror movie that was ever made, and it still holds up to this day. 40 years later, it still holds up. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed my list of movies that impacted me the most. If you want to do a video response, if you want to do your own list, please do so, and link it in the comment section below, or leave your list in the comment section below. Let me know what movies impacted you the most. And until next time, you guys take it easy. Peace.